Yo, geeky!
Capcom as a company is fairly well known for continuing series that tend to make a decent profit. See all 800 billion versions of Street Fighter 2. So, what did they do after making 7 installments of a popular side-scrolling series that practically built their company? Well, they made this, Mega Man 8 for the PS1 and Sega Saturn. The only question is it half as good as the other installments? The story is, well, actually, I don't even need to tell you this story, as the prestigious Dr. Light has volunteered to explain it himself.
A strange meteor has fallen to Earth just a while ago. You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
Yeah, I think he may have recently suffered from a stroke or something. Let me just check my production notes and find a quick translation. Yes. Dr. Wily is evil and has made 8 more robot masters. Go kick their collective butts. I have no idea what Dr. Light was on about. Anyway. The story for Mega Man 8 is rather unnecessary, as most returning vets will probably just ignore it to hop right into the action. And new players will get a rather meager story about evil space energy fueling robots, and a space robot trying to kill it. It's not really the strong point, but the story has never really been the main focus of Mega Man either. Like the previous Classic Series installment, and the entirety of the Mega Man X series, Mega Man 8 starts off with an introductory stage. The stage itself has a fairly simple layout, but it lets players teach themselves the basics of navigation and combat without any sort of forced tutorial or overpowering the character. The level has a few hidden goodies as well to reward explorers, and a mini-boss at the end, just to serve as a sort of final exam for the basic skills the players have taught themselves. After the introductory stage, players are dropped into a level select menu where they can pick their route. Unfortunately, Capcom took the Mega Man 7 approach to level selecting, and only allow the first 4 of 8 levels to be selectable. This is compounded by the fact that one of the latter 4 levels consist of puzzles based around the abilities you gain in the first 4 levels. And while I have to commend Capcom for putting players into a situation where they need to think about the full use of their arsenal, a lack of freedom created by barring off half the stages seems like an incredibly poor trade-off. An ability-based puzzle stage could have easily been part of the final area of the game. It wouldn't have compromised the player's freedom, and it would still have had that sort of final exam feel that you expect by the end of the game. That said, level design is very well done. It slowly introduces obstacles and hazards in controlled environments, and then later combines them to test the player's skill. The only time level design really feels like it slips up are with the out-of-place arcade segments. Some levels break up the platforming with horizontal shmup segments, or those really god-awful megaboard segments, which are incredibly out of place. It seems like a meaningless design choice, as the solid platforming is really what Mega Man is best known for. Removing players from it seems counterintuitive. As well, the average level layout is generally broken up into 2 or 3 chunks which need to load in between, which in turn slows down the gameplay and makes it feel stilted. The presentation is something of a mixed bag as well. The cutscenes look good, but are incredibly campy. The backgrounds and environments are all fairly impressive, and bright as well. However, the aesthetic really stumbles with the sprites. Mega Man himself looks like a malnourished girl in cosplay, rather than a kick-ass fighting robot. Most of the other sprites, while bright and fitting of the classic Mega Man theme, seem a little underwhelming and weak compared to their previous iterations. As well, few robot masters have any real interest to their design. I mean, you've got a snowman, a clown, a bomb, and a water jug. I mean, come on, what's up with Aquaman? And he sucked as a DC hero. Why the bloody hell would you turn him into a water jug and then make him a robot master? Although he is fun to smash. They're all fairly uninteresting compared to Tengu Man or the Two-Headed Soldier, but the ratio is way off. The audio design is not terribly good either. Let's just start with the elephant in the room here, the voice acting.
I'm impressed!
It's god-awful. None of the voices sound terribly professional, and it seems like they're recording with their first script read-through. In addition, the worst of the voice casts are probably the two you hear the most. Mega Man sounds like the aforementioned malnourished cosplay girl I earlier compared him to.
Thank you.
And Dr. Light sounds like someone who recently had a lobotomy trying to do a bad Elmer Fudd impersonation.
Yes.
And while it's an incredibly small gripe, they mispronounce Bass's name.
You'll pay for this insult.
He's a fairly major character, and no one actually cared to double check on that, which feels like one of the greatest insults of all. The sound effects are fairly unfitting for most instances. Every time you land from a jump, you make a very uncharacteristic squishing sound, as opposed to the previous clanking sound he made in other games. The soundtrack has always been a big thing for the Mega Man series, and in this installment it's fairly average. And the problem here is that while an average soundtrack is fine, this is Mega Man. Music has always been a cornerstone in the development of the Mega Man series. I mean, the main character is called Rock. The controls are all fairly simple. Run, jump, shoot, repeat. Exploration is rather rewarding, as most optional areas have upgrade bolts to pick up. The game also tries to utilize Robot Master weapons for exploration, which is a cool idea on paper, but it really fell apart as it seems like their design as weapons was secondary. In addition, their environmental uses feel incredibly forced, especially when they've got a mandatory level focusing entirely on it. It just really makes me yearn for the days of the Metal Blade, where you could just use your Robot Master weapons as, I don't know, weapons, because messing about with the various weapons was just fun, but here it just doesn't do that. Combat is simple, however, the initial buster is pathetically weak, even when charged. You get upgrade bolts which you can purchase upgrades with, but they're limited, so you don't really get the luxury of experimenting to find the buster that really suits you. And as I've already addressed, the Robot Master weapons aren't suited for combat, which is counterintuitive. The Mega Ball is probably the worst weapon in Mega Man history, rivaled only by maybe the Top Spin, compounded by the fact that it's mandatory to learn, as there are two bosses that pretty much only take damage from it. So you better get your protractor ready. The Ice Wave is so situational it's not worth using against the robot that's weak to it. The Flame Sword has no range. Thunderclaw is limited to its usefulness due to its lack of range, and the enemy has to be standing directly in front of you to be effective. Homing Sniper, while hilarious against Astro Man, the charge required to make it remotely effective as a weapon lessens its usefulness. So, with the exceptions of Tornado Hold and Flash Bomb, due to their multi-hit nature, and maybe Astro Crash, although that's debatable due to its incredibly limited ammo, you may as well just stick to your trusty Mega Buster and hope you upgraded it properly. And if you didn't, all I can really say is restart and get the Arrow Charge upgrade. The game has multiple routes, and plenty of upgrade bolts to find. They're really the only source of replayability to be had. And as I mentioned, the routes are limited, as you can only select from 4 Robot Masters at a time. In addition, there's a limited number of bolts, so your ability to experiment with upgrades is non-existent. In the end, the only real draw to play this game after you beat it once is nostalgia. The main negatives of note are the awful voices, the unnecessary and poorly told story, the limited upgrade possibilities, the fairly useless weapons. The good is the fact that it's a Mega Man game. So aside from the music, you're getting good controls, great level design, an excellent learning curve, as well as just great gameplay. So while it's not the worst classic Mega Man game ever, that to this day remains to be 4, it's far from the best. So if you want a platformer with tight controls, with an excellent learning curve that's emphasized by the great, although stilted stage design, this is probably for you. However, if you're a Mega Man fan that's just looking for the next Mega Man 2 or 3, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you're just getting into the Mega Man series, it's actually a pretty good place to start, as aside from one title in the series, it only gets better from here. As a side note, if you're gonna look for a copy of Mega Man 8, I would look for the Sega Saturn version, as it's slightly more canonical. It has 2 additional bosses that were teased in Mega Man 7, but they were removed for the PS1 version. And of course, Capcom put the PS1 version on all the anniversary collections, so the only way to fight those 2 bosses is on the Sega Saturn version. But that's just another reason to go out and buy a Sega Saturn. Other than that, it's a Mega Man game. Not the best Mega Man game, but it's not the worst either. Although it's not far off.
Jump, jump, jump.